I think Ian Finley's not here, so Edward Hitchcock.
I had some paper handouts here.
Well, somebody will come and, Sean will come and collect those and distribute for you.
Thank you, councillors, for the opportunity to come and speak to my submission. My focus is on the issue of asset sales, but particularly about the Orion assets, because my own experience has been in management and in working for Orion, so I feel that's something I have an ability to comment on. But for me, the first thing about asset ownership is, I think that for almost all of us, if you have an asset, you have something that you need to use all the time, you need to own it because it's good for cost minimising and it gives you control. How many of us would rent our cars or rent a house if we had the option to buy? I think it's very basic that ownership of assets that you use every day is actually very important. But I want to talk particularly about the things that the council gains by retaining ownership of its Orion electricity assets. Obviously, the first one of those are the dividends. The thing about the electricity assets is that they're a very secure asset. The income stream from them is very reliable. The use of electricity is likely to continue in the city for quite a long time to come. And I think that's actually why there's such a lot of people are talking about selling assets, is that there are actually people out there who are very keen to get their hands on them. And I think we need to be careful with which motivations that we're following and considering selling them. A second item, I think, is that staff work better when they're actually serving the people rather than just serving an employer. Under public ownership, management is actually there to serve the city and its people by good financial management, but also it can in making its decisions, it consider the needs of the city rather than just of the shareholders. And we all know the examples of Telecom, Transrail that have been privatised, and then the owners, they are all there looking after their owners, and that has been at the cost of the country. And anecdotally, I hear that Wellington's electricity assets are in much the same situation. They've been sold off, and now they're managed in a cost minimising way. I think some actual object lessons in that come from the experience in the earthquakes. Orion had, before the earthquakes, spent considerable money strengthening substation buildings. It might well not have done that if it had been cost minimising. It was there to make sure to improve the possibility of good performance in the earthquakes. The transmission line that was constructed in a few days after the earthquake was an example of the fact that Orion had put aside some stocks of 66 kV line construction materials that if it had been cost minimising, it couldn't have done it. In that situation, the Orion is there designing the network so that it's going to serve the city, not so that it's the cheapest thing that will get the necessary regulatory ticks. Another thing I think that's significant about ownership of assets, especially where they're ones that have a big interaction with the council. Every Orion asset is on council land, and there are interactions between Orion and council on all sorts of issues, that when it's publicly owned, Orion can, in effect, give an informal return to the city. It doesn't need to be extracting every last cent out of the council for services it provides. Whereas as soon as it's privatised, that boundary between the city assets and the Orion assets is going to be a strict financial business, and both sides are going to be trying to extract the last bit, which is going to cost a lot of money to negotiate, and in the end, I think the council will lose. But of course, the question then comes as to what do you do instead of owning assets. I'm aware that the earthquakes have put the council in a not particularly good situation. But I think the answer to that is that we need to retain the assets so that borrowing is appropriate. I think that assets that are non-essential should be delayed. Obviously, the obvious one is the stadium, but I think there are several other assets that we're replacing the temporary things we have now. Perhaps the temporary things could be made to last longer so that we can retain control of those assets. There's scope for asking central government to contribute, but I think the other thing that's really key is to make sure that we're taking advice from people who have the interests of the council and the people at hand, rather than what might be interest in the people who might buy the assets. That's me.
Thank you very much. That's time up, I'm afraid. Yeah,
Okay.
It's not an ideal situation, but if people can leave a little bit of time at the end for questions, it would help the engagement and make it, you know, sort of more of an exchange rather than a straight out submission. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.